we are here to speak with William Dalrymple about his craft, his writing, and his new book, 9 Lives. William, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Vera. Pleasure. I remain detached from the interviewees. I'm a shadowy presence in the book. I'm there only on the margins of the stories.
William, how did this book begin shaping? I mean, its central idea, the entire plan.
It's a book that had a very long and slow gestation. It began when I did, in 1997, for the BBC, a documentary series called Indian Journeys, which had a Hindu journey up to Gamuk, a Muslim journey to Ajmer Sharif, and a Christian journey to the St. Thomas Shrine at Mylapore. But I struggled for, what was it, 15 years to try and find a way of writing Indian religion. Didn't step on all the potential landmines of Orientalism, exoticism, and it was only when I was sent off to do this Aid Sutra story on the Devdasis of Belgaum and Samdati that I found what I thought was probably a solution to this, which was to present one person telling their story and to step back as far as possible as a narrator and to let them tell their own story. So 90% of this book is in reported speech, and it's been individuals telling their own stories, which I hope has avoided most of the potential charges of misinterpreting the plural world of Indian spirituality. Well, I have always had a parallel career as a journalist to my career as a writer, and after finishing a book, which I always find a rather exhausting process, it is, people imagine writing is a kind of leisurely and a job for layabouts. I personally find the actual writing of a book hugely exhausting. It's like doing a finals exam or something. You're completely obsessed by something and focused on it for a period of several months. And I find short journalism, magazine pieces, and a lovely way of recovering from the struggles of writing. So after every book I tend to take a kind of year of mixing book tours with journalism, which is a nice way to, after each book is published. And this is slightly different from H. Kali in that the stories are longer. In Kali they're kind of 5,000-6,000 word essays. These are more like 20,000 words. And they are more closely focused on a single theme. Kali really is a collection of journalism, sort of disguised as a book, with a pretty tenuous coherence. I was very pleased how people enjoyed it here, but it is really just a collection of old journalism. This is a coherent project to see how India's many different religious traditions are changing as India changes with increasing speed and acceleration. Well, this is not me in historical mode at all. There is no archive research at all in this book. What history is there is book learning from. What this book does is a very contemporary book. It looks at 9 real individuals living today in modern India or modern South Asia, and attempts to tell their story. I think there is new ground here. I think what this book. The form of this book is the non-fiction short story, which I think is not something that's been attempted before. Immediately before beginning work on this, I read Daniel Moinuddin's Other Voices, Other Rooms, which is a fabulous collection of short stories from Pakistan, each of which focuses on a different individual. And I think the ghost of that book lingers in several of the stories. But I think the form is new. I mean, many of the subjects are subjects which people have written about before. I mean, there's a whole wealth of literature on Naga sadhus or tantrics and so on, or the Jains, or the Bowls. Each of these traditions has a literature, so it's not as if these are completely novel subjects. But I think the form is quite new. it happens to be the number of stories that made it through the very tough selection process.
Yeah, I was about to come to that. That often there is material, a lot of material that a writer culls out, but finally, does not stick it into the narrative. What is it that has not made it into this book?
Well, all sorts of stories for different reasons. One of the stories I was most keen to do didn't make it because the guy wouldn't give an interview until the very end. This was a story of a middle-class Kashmiri who became a Hizbul Mujahideen commander in the valley, who went off to the camps in Kandahar, who came back, was disgusted by what he saw the jihadis doing, and ended up as a Sufi by the Dal Lake in a perfect narrative arc, and would have made a lovely story and an interesting story, because I think Kashmir is something which is underreported in the Indian media, and many horrific and strange things go on in the valley, both horrific by the security forces and the jihadis, and that one he for quite understandable reasons didn't want to be interviewed in detail, for what reasons one can understand. And then eventually, when he did agree, it was too late. I was going back to England for the summer. I was going there for June, July, and so I missed him. There were other stories. There was a Syrian Christian story I was very keen to try and get in, which is in the end too similar to the other Kerala story, the possession dancer, Hari Das, Deyam dancer, and that had too much crossover. They were both about possession, so that one went. There was various Sikh stories which were lined up which never made it in. There were all sorts of stories which could have gone in. I must have done about 20 interviews as detailed as the ones that went in, and they just didn't gel. I mean, what makes each of these stories work is just how wonderful the individual life of each person has been, and if the stories don't come, the stories in the book would not be interesting. So I just ended up with 9. It's a fairly random figure, but it's every person that interviews me asks this question. I have to come up with a better story. I'm a secret cat lover, or there's 9 forms of devotion of Krishna, or something. But the reality is actually it's just an accident.
One particular story drew our attention. This is about this bard from Rajasthan who continues the Indian oral tradition of storytelling. And you're quite a storyteller and performer yourself. What struck you most about him?
Mohan Bopra and I became very close friends. I first interviewed him for a New Yorker story in 2003. And we performed together in a whole chain of literary festivals, the Siahi Festival in last November, most recently at the Jaipur Literary Festival in January. And it was at the Jaipur Literary Festival that he complained of stomach troubles, and I sent him off to a doctor, and he found he had leukemia. And he's died, and he's taken his particular branch of the Papaji epic to his grave, because he didn't hand it on to his sons. His sons were not interested. And so that tradition is, of all, I mean, many of these traditions in the book are potentially fragile, but I think none more so than the oral tradition.